70 tons of fear. That is how Allied tankers describe this machine. The Jagdtiger stands as the heaviest mass-produced armored vehicle of World War II. A lethal colossus, its mere presence on the battlefield could instantly shift the momentum of a fight. The moment it rolled into position, enemy tanks would turn back. Infantry scrambled for cover. Allied commanders didn't weigh their tactical options. They looked for any way to avoid the engagement entirely. Its frontal armor was considered virtually impenetrable. Even at point-blank range, most Allied guns stood no chance against it. The Jagdtiger was designed to be the ultimate tank destroyer. One shot, one kill, delivered from a distance where return fire was physically impossible. On paper, it looked like a total victory for German engineering and military logic. Yet, instead of a savior, it became a monument to the desperation of a dying Reich, a terrifying, heavy-handed argument from a nation already reeling from crushing defeats and racing toward collapse. It represented the pinnacle of German engineering, the absolute limit of what the Reich's industry could squeeze out of steel, mathematics, and a desperate faith in wonder weapons. The Jagdtiger was a symbol that the war had moved beyond conventional means. The bet was no longer placed on victory, but on fear. This machine was not born out of strength, but out of a desperate necessity to stop the inevitable at any cost. The turning point was 1943, the Battle of Kursk. Germany suffered a catastrophic defeat, and from that moment on, they were no longer playing by their own rules. Panzer divisions lost hundreds of vehicles and, more importantly, their veteran crews. For the first time, it was clear that technical superiority alone could no longer guarantee survival. As the fronts tightened and resources vanished, the momentum of the war slipped through the Reich's fingers. Faith in standard solutions shattered. Maneuver, tactics, and even the legendary Tigers and Panthers were no longer enough to stem the tide. The war had shifted from a battle of ideas to a battle of production lines. The Allies were churning out tanks by the thousands. Enemy losses were replaced faster than Germany could inflict them. German industry could no longer keep up with the race. Fuel, metal, and time were all running out. When it became clear they could not win with numbers, a dangerous idea took hold. If the war cannot be stopped by mass, it must be stopped by terror. Not by an army, but by a machine. A single, terrifying weapon that would make the enemy freeze before the first shot was even fired. Germany stopped looking for a versatile weapon and started looking for a duelist that could not lose. The Jagdtiger was built on extremes: maximum armor, maximum firepower, maximum fear. The concept was simple and brutal: a tank destroyer that annihilates the enemy before they can even get within range. No maneuvering, no prolonged firefights. This was no longer an attempt to win the war. It was an attempt to make every Allied step forward so expensive that they might stop taking them. Exactly like this, the Jagdtiger ceased to be a mere project and became the final argument: heavy, lethal, and desperate. And Germany chose its heaviest existing tank, the Tiger II, as the foundation. But instead of refining the turret, they abandoned it entirely. It was too weak, too vulnerable. On that chassis, they mounted a fixed casemate and integrated a 128mm gun, a weapon originally designed to strike heavy targets at extreme ranges. The machine was intentionally over-armored. Every extra millimeter of steel was prioritized over speed. Every additional ton was the price paid for invulnerability. There were no compromises in this decision. The Jagdtiger was not an evolution, but an extreme, an attempt to push the tank destroyer concept to its absolute limit. This was the moment the idea of desperate superiority took the form of terrifyingly heavy metal. The project received a decisive push from the top. When Hitler was introduced to the new machine, no doubts remained. The concept of a heavy tank destroyer was approved without long discussions. It was then that the machine received its name: Jagdtiger, the hunting tiger. The name sounded like a promise, a predator that doesn't hunt its prey but waits and destroys it with a single strike. From that moment, the Jagdtiger was no longer an engineering experiment. It became a political project and a symbol of faith that one supreme machine could change the tide of war. The decision was made. There was no more time for doubt. The first thing that caught the eye was the Jagdtiger's front. Its combat mass approached 70 tons, and the vast majority of that weight was concentrated in the forward projection. The frontal casemate plate was up to 250 millimeters thick and set at a slight angle. This wasn't for ricochets. It was simply to be impenetrable. It wasn't armor in the traditional sense. It was a solid steel wall. On paper and in practice, The front of the Jagdtiger was considered virtually invincible. Even heavy Allied anti-tank guns could not guarantee a penetration from any reasonable distance. This created a sense of absolute protection, a machine that could be hit but could not be stopped. But this monolith had a price. All of the Jagdtiger's protective logic was focused on the front. The hull front was up to 150 millimeters, while the sides were only about 80 millimeters. The protection remained serious but no longer absolute. The machine was designed to look only forward. There it was invincible, but from the flanks and rear, it was not. This meant the Jagdtiger could not be used for maneuvering. Every turn of the hull was a risk. Every attempt to change position was a moment of vulnerability. The design held a fundamental contradiction, a wall in the front and a compromise on the sides. The Jagdtiger's true purpose, however, was not its armor, but its gun. The 128mm PaK-44 was a weapon that exceeded the boundaries of conventional tank combat. Its armor-piercing shells could penetrate over 200 millimeters of armor from a distance of 2 kilometers. At such ranges, most Allied tanks could not even return aimed fire. The Jagdtiger saw the enemy first, fired further, and destroyed the target before it even realized the danger. In a duel, this gun turned any Allied tank into a doomed target. No maneuver, no exchange of fire, no second chance. But this power had a dark side. The 128mm rounds were so heavy and bulky that a standard rate of fire was impossible. It used two-part ammunition, first the projectile, then the shell with the propellant charge. Every shot required time, effort, and precise coordination. This is why the Jagdtiger had 2 loaders, yet even they couldn't make the firing fast. In reality, the Jagdtiger could not provide a high volume of fire. It fired rarely but lethally. A single miss or delay became a crisis. While the crew prepared the next shot, the battlefield could change. For every kilometer of range and millimeter of penetration, the price was paid in the most expensive resource: time. Inside, there was no sense of power, only the feeling of being overloaded. The 6-man crew worked in constant tension and cramped conditions, as the massive gun and ammunition took up nearly all the space. The driver's position in the front hull required a cut in the upper frontal plate, a rare, forced weakening of the monolithic armor. Vision was limited. Observation devices were sacrificed for protection. The Jagdtiger saw poorly, but it had to survive. Beyond the blueprints, the engine worked at its absolute limit. At nearly 72 tons, the machine kept its power plant in a state of constant overload. Power existed only in theory. In practice, the Jagdtiger accelerated slowly and overheated rapidly during movement. Every march was an ordeal. The suspension, inherited from the Tiger II, was never designed for such mass. Road wheels, torsion bars, and the transmission wore out faster than they could be fixed. Speed dropped, maneuverability vanished, and every turn became a risk. Ultimately, the Jagdtiger was often found exactly where it wasn't supposed to be: stationary, vulnerable, and dependent not on the enemy, but on its own weight. The mass intended for protection had turned against the machine itself. This led to a grim reality. The machine was prepared for self-destruction from the start, equipped with internal explosive charges to be detonated if it broke down or faced capture. The Jagdtiger's chassis housed a grim secret: built-in demolition charges. Their purpose was simple and ruthless: to scuttle the vehicle in the event of a breakdown, encirclement, or impossible recovery. This was a silent admission of reality. You couldn't fix it quickly in the field, you couldn't tow it, and you damn sure couldn't leave it for the enemy. If a Jagdtiger stalled, it became a liability. Consequently, its fate was often decided not by the enemy, but by its own crew. At this point, the myth of the ultimate weapon finally cracked. A machine conceived as a symbol of absolute power was, from day one, engineered for its own destruction. In reality, the Jagdtiger was a boutique weapon. Only about 70 to 80 units were ever built. Not hundreds, not thousands, just a few dozen. In a war of this magnitude, that meant one thing: it could never turn the tide. It lacked the numbers to plug gaps, hold the line, or compensate for attrition. The ultimate weapon turned out to be a ghost on the battlefield. As the gap between ambition and reality widened, the Jagdtiger shifted from a tool of war into a symbol: massive, terrifying, and strategically irrelevant. On paper, even a small number of Jagdtigers looked formidable. A heavy tank destroyer battalion was officially supposed to field 3 companies of 14 vehicles each. Over 40 Jagdtigers in a single formation was a terrifying prospect that, in theory, could turn any Allied offensive into a slaughter. But that battalion only existed in documents. In practice, units rarely received even half their allotted strength. Some never made it to the front. Others broke down before the first shot was fired. The Jagdtiger began its war not in the mud, but in reports. Impressive, imposing, and almost entirely disconnected from the chaos of the actual front. If the Jagdtiger inspired fear on the ground, it had no answer for the sky. Allied air superiority became its greatest nemesis, fast, relentless, and indifferent to frontal armor. P-47 Thunderbolts and Typhoons struck from above, where steel thickness didn't matter. One precision strike, and the 70-ton Behemoth became a static coffin. The Germans tried to fight back with mounted anti-aircraft machine guns, but these were acts of desperation, not solutions. A machine designed to duel tanks was helpless against total air dominance. More often than not, Jagdtigers met their end not in a tank duel, but in a sudden vertical inferno they couldn't even see coming. One man who saw the Jagdtiger for what it truly was Otto Carius, one of Germany's top tank aces. His assessment was devoid of propaganda. He acknowledged the monstrous firepower, but noted that the machine demanded conditions the war in late 1944 no longer provided. It was too heavy, too slow, and too maintenance-intensive. To Carius, the Jagdtiger wasn't a tank. It was a weapon of waiting. It required pre-prepared positions, infantry screens, and time, the one resource the Reich had exhausted. For even the most veteran crews, the machine was a burden of logistics rather than an engine of initiative. The journey to the front was often more dangerous than the combat itself. Marches became agonizing endurance tests for the overstrained suspension. Columns would stretch thin as Jagdtigers broke down one by one, leaving them isolated and immobile. Every stop was a death sentence. While the crew scrambled to fix a transmission, Allied Jabos would inevitably circle overhead. Many Jagdtigers never fired a shot at the enemy. They were abandoned on roadsides or detonated by their own crews to prevent capture. Reliability, it turned out, was a far more lethal metric than armor thickness. There were, however, moments when the Jagdtiger found its element. From a concealed, prepared position with a clear line of sight, it became the apex predator it was meant to be. Allied tanks were erased from distances so great their crews never even knew they were being watched. One shell, one kill, repeatedly. No maneuver, no duel, no chance to return fire. In these rare flashes, the Jagdtiger justified its existence. It didn't fight an attack, it deleted it. But these moments were the exception. Every successful engagement was a local episode that failed to alter the map. While a single Jagdtiger might pick off a few Shermans, the front kept moving, the planes kept diving, and the war kept grinding toward Berlin. These sparks of efficiency only highlighted the machine's ultimate paradox. It was deadliest when it was too rare and too late to matter. In the end, the fate of the Jagdtiger served as a final, heavy warning. The majority of these machines were not lost in tank duels. They were abandoned due to mechanical failures, detonated by their own crews, or picked off by Allied air power. Out of the 70 to 80 Jagdtigers ever built, a significant portion never even realized their combat potential. It possessed a main gun unrivaled in power and frontal armor that was practically impenetrable. Yet its impact on the course of the war was minimal. Technically, the Jagdtiger was ahead of its time, but it proved completely unsuited for the reality of late 1944, a war of rapid maneuver, total air superiority, and overwhelming industrial pressure. It stood as the pinnacle of German engineering and simultaneously its ultimate dead end. It was never a weapon of salvation, but rather a heavy symbol of the moment when even the most powerful machines can no longer compensate for a strategic collapse. The Jagdtiger entered history not as a victor, but as a reminder. In war, victory is not decided by sheer force, but by the ability to apply that force at the right time and on the right scale.